When the side chick took a dark turn, wife murdered at midnight, haunted forever. True story. The clock struck midnight, silencing everything in the small town of Maplewood. But all was not still. Something sinister lurked. Just hours earlier, Cindy had wished her husband, Mark, a sweet goodnight. Little did she know, beneath the layers of affection, a storm was brewing. Mark had secrets, deep and twisted secrets that would devour everything he held dear. The shadow of his side chick, Tara, hung ominously over their lives, a specter of betrayal and bloodshed. An unusual chill crept into the night air, wrapping itself around the house like a shroud. It was a night unlike any other, filled with whispers, tension, and the prickling dread that something was terribly wrong. Mark had been on edge lately, his eyes hollow and his hands trembling. Cindy noticed. Her heart raced as she caught glimpses of hidden text messages, laughter too loud for late-night conversations. Every secret was a dagger, twisting deeper into her back. But she loved him, she clung to hope even as the darkness sank its claws into their lives. Then came the screams. Blood-curdling cries rang out, ripping through the calmness, echoing like thunder. Neighbors rushed to their windows, faces pale with shock. Cindy was found lying on the living room floor, the gruesome scene chilling everyone to the bone. It looked like a nightmare, a blood-stained carpet, a lifeless gaze frozen in fright. Mark didn't just lose a wife, he initiated a horror that would haunt him forever. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but how did it come to this? What secrets did Mark hold that twisted his heart into a cold fist? The townsfolk whispered of dark rituals and a shadowy figure that had been seen lurking near their home days before the tragedy. Signs, they called them. Was it truly an outcome born from betrayal, or was something more malevolent at play? Night after night, frantic nightmares plagued Mark as he faced the echoes of Cindy's stare, and dread filled the air like a heavy tarp, suffocating any chance of escape. The darkness was just beginning to deepen. Who would be next? Mark couldn't shake the weight of his reality. The police were swarming his house, turning every corner of his life upside down, demanding answers he couldn't provide. He felt their eyes boring into him as if they could pry the truth out of his very soul. The sirens had pierced the calm of Maplewood, dragging him into a nightmare that felt far too real to escape. Everything that once felt stable now slipped away, a crumbling foundation beneath his feet. His heart pounded with guilt and panic. How could he explain the sinister undercurrent to his life? Each question from the detectives wrapped around him like chains. About Cindy, that fateful night. The officers' faces were stern, disbelieving of his claims of innocence. What were you doing there? They must have been thinking. But how could he admit the truth? He excused himself to the bathroom, the flickering light above only adding to the shadows that clung to him. He splashed water on his face, struggling to breathe as he confronted his reflection. The man looking back was a stranger, eyes bloodshot and hollow. But there behind the fatigue there was something else. A flicker of terror sparked as he recalled Tara, her laughter ringing in his ears like a haunting melody. They had crossed lines, and now those lines fed into the chaos unfolding in his life. As he leaned against the sink, he felt a shudder ripple through him. A feeling of being watched, of the darkness creeping further into his life. He grabbed the edge of the sink, feeling the cool porcelain grounding him amidst the swirling storm of confusion. But as he looked down, horror washed over him. There, in the dim light, was a smear of red on his hands. No. It couldn't be, could it? Mark's heart raced as he rubbed his palms together, his mind racing back to the horrific sight in the living room. How had he left? What if he had touched something? His breaths came in quick bursts as the blood on his hands felt like it was seeping into his very being, an imprint of guilt that wouldn't wash away. That he shook his head, trying to dispel the visions clawing at his mind. How had it come to this? Why had he let things spiral so far? As he stumbled into the main room, a glint caught his eye. There, amid the chaos, lay Cindy's phone, illuminated with a new message. The screen's light flickered like a beacon, urging him to investigate. Curiosity mingled with dread, and he felt the pull of the unknown tugging at him. Mark reached for it, hesitating for a moment. What secrets could it reveal? Would it lead to his salvation or seal his doom? He swiped his thumb across the screen, his heart thumping in anticipation of the truth that could either absolve or destroy him forever. Just as he began reading, the front door creaked open. A silhouette loomed in the doorway, and Mark froze, blood running cold. It was Tara, eyes wild, hair disheveled, a figure haunted by secrets of her own. "Mark, we need to talk, now," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. What did she know? What more darkness was lurking just out of sight? The night was far from over, and the truth was waiting, poised to strike. Tara stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind her as if sealing them in a claustrophobic cage of dread. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken words. Mark could feel the tension crackling between them like static before a storm. "Did you read it?" Her voice pierced through the silence, eyes darting toward the glowing screen of Cindy's phone, now cradled in his trembling hands. He hesitated, the weight of her gaze feeling like a physical blow. "I'm not sure, just show me," she demanded, stepping closer, her urgency palpable. It was like she was pulling him under, a tidal force dragging him into the depths. With a deep breath, Mark turned the phone to her. He braced himself for the reaction he feared most. Tara's eyes widened as she read the last message, a chill shadow crossing her face. "You'll regret this. You'll pay for betraying me. Who sent this?" Her voice tightened, a low whisper that sent shivers crawling up Mark's spine. I think it's from Cindy," he replied, swallowing hard. "But it doesn't make sense. Tara, you have to believe me, I didn't do anything to her. I wanted to end things before it's too late for before." She snapped, the thin veneer of control cracking. "What else don't I know? I've been haunted by this for too long. You need to come clean, Mark." He could feel the walls closing in around him, each second swelling with anxiety. What if she really did know? What if she had pieced together the fragments he couldn't approach? Terror clawed at his throat. "Tara, please," he begged, his voice barely a whisper. "You have to trust me. I can explain everything. But we need to figure out what's happening first." As their eyes locked, he saw it, the spark of fear blanketing the fire of love they once shared. The enormity of choice loomed over them, heavy and grotesque. The ring of police radios shrilled outside, a dissonant reminder of the world crashing around them. "No, we need to go. They can't find us together," she insisted, nervously glancing toward the window as if the officers could somehow sense their secret. "Go where?" His pulse thudded in his ears like a warped soundtrack. "If we leave now, they'll think we're guilty." "Then what do you suggest?" she interrupted, her breath catching. "Stay here and wait to get arrested?" They both froze, the unspoken implications crashing in. Moments stretched into heartbeats of silence. Just then, the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps approached the front door. Mark's heart dropped, panic surged through him. "Play along," Tara whispered urgently, swallowing hard. "We'll figure this out together." The door shook as someone pounded on it, their heavy knock resonating like thunder in the oppressive quiet. Mark's mind raced. This was it, the moment everything could unravel or find its course. He shoved the phone into his pocket, and as Tara stepped back, he forced a calm facade over his racing thoughts. How could he protect them both? What if the truth came out now, in front of those waiting on the other side? With another thunderous knock, his throat tightened. He glanced at Tara, her eyes wide and brimming with resolve. They were a team now, whether they liked it or not. As he moved toward the door, he had to wonder, was this just the beginning of their nightmare, or could it lead them to freedom? Just as he reached for the knob, a chilling realization struck him. What if the urgency in Tara's voice was born from fear of him, not the police? What if he wasn't the only one holding a terrifying secret? With a shaking hand, he opened the door. And the face waiting for him was one he never expected to see. Mark's breath caught in his throat as the door swung open. There, bathed in the stark light of the porch lamp, stood Cindy, her face a blend of anger and sorrow that twisted his gut. It was as if all the secrets and shadows that had clung to him had suddenly materialized, taking form right before his eyes. "Cindy!" he managed to blurt out, shock rippling through him. The last time he'd seen her, chaos had spun out and led to a heart-wrenching goodbye. He had thought he'd closed that chapter, but now here she was, an unwelcome ghost from his past, appearing like a specter at the worst possible moment. Tara. Cindy's voice was sharp and flat. She didn't even look at Tara, her focus was solely on Mark. "I thought you were done with me. I thought you wanted to pretend this was over." "Cindy, wait," Mark started, but Cindy pushed past him, stepping into the small living room with an ominous resolve that sent tremors through his spine. "You think you can throw me away like garbage and live happily ever after?" Her voice dripped with venom. She turned to Tara, who was still frozen by the door, watching the scene unfold with wide, terrified eyes. "What is she doing here?" Tara asked, her voice barely more than a whisper, each word heavy like stones in the air. She was just, I didn't want this to happen," Mark stammered, panic climbing up his throat. He could feel the world crashing down around him, and every breath he took felt like it could be his last. Cindy's gaze darted back to him, fierce and predatory. "I came because I heard. I heard what she did." Her words hung in the air like a prayer turned curse. "What do you mean?" Tara stepped forward, a mix of confusion and mounting anger flashing in her eyes. "You're the reason for all this? Just a few texts. That's it, right?" Cindy's laughter pierced through the heavy tension. It was wild, a desperate bark that sent chills dancing down Mark's spine. "Oh, Tara, you have no idea. It's not just about a phone. Your precious Mark has been playing games, and now it's time for him to understand the consequences." "No. You don't," Mark shouted, stepping forward to confront Cindy, but Tara grabbed his arm, her grip a painful reminder of the fracture spreading between them. "Stop." Tara's voice cut through the chaos, but it only seemed to fuel the fire. "You're not getting away with this, Cindy. Whatever you're threatening us with, it won't work." Cindy stepped closer, her eyes glinting with a dangerous light. "You think you're in control? You think you can just walk away? You won't escape this, either of you." Mark felt dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. The fearful glances exchanged between him and Tara spoke volumes. They had already stumbled into a web of lies, but now someone was hell-bent on pulling them further in. "What did you see?" Mark demanded, his hands shaking as he tried to process everything. "What do you want from us?" Cindy's smile was tight, holding on to something dark. "I want to show you what true regret feels like. You thought you could erase me, but I'm still here and I won't let this go. Not now, not ever." Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from outside, shattering the oppressive atmosphere like glass. The sirens, the weight of the encroaching police presence turned the air electric. Mark's heart raced as he turned to Tara. Time was slipping through his fingers like sand, and the danger was escalating around them. Were they trapped? Or could they still survive this unexpected storm? A realization washed over him, the threat was greater than just the police. It was lurking in the shadows right before them, and it was alive. "Get out!" Mark shouted, shoving Tara toward the back door. "Now! We have to leave before," but Cindy's voice, low and treacherous, interrupted him. "You think you can run from me? You think this is over? You don't even know." Before she could finish, the door crashed open, thrusting them into the chaotic night filled with uncertainty. Mark's resolve flared. Could he protect Tara, without knowing where the danger truly lay, he turned on his heel, ready to plunge into the unknown, with only one thought ringing in his mind: confront the darkness or succumb to it. But outside, beneath sirens and shadows, lay an even deeper secret waiting to twist their fate. Was there still hope for redemption, or had they both sealed their doom? They tore through the back door, the night swallowing them whole. The sirens blared, echoing through the alleyway, mingling with the sounds of their panicked breaths. Mark barely registered the weight of Tara's hand in his, but he could feel the urgency radiating between them like a jolt of electricity. "Where do we go?" Tara gasped, glancing over her shoulder, her eyes wide with fear. "Anywhere but here," Mark replied, heart racing. Every instinct screamed at him to get to safety, but the gnawing dread clung to him like a shadow. As they sprinted into the dark, they heard the distant shouts of officers, the haunting crackle of radios. They rounded a corner, ducking behind a dumpster. Mark pressed against the cold metal, his mind racing. How could things escalate so quickly? And why was Cindy doing this? What did she want? Tara peered out from their hiding spot, jaw clenched. "We can't stay here forever." "What about Cindy?" Mark hesitated, thoughts swirling. "She's dangerous. We need to go to my brother's place. He'll know what to do." "Your brother?" Tara shot him a look. "The one who doesn't even know about me. It doesn't matter right now. He can help us." The urgency grew in his voice, propelling them into motion once more. They took off, navigating through the back streets, the air thick with tension, but the deeper they ran, the more Mark felt a creeping sense of doom. Cindy was just as unpredictable as the tempest brewing outside. Her threats felt like they still lingered in the air, wrapping around him tighter with every step. He could picture her, seething with anger, plotting her next move. Tara's voice trembled, pulling him from his dark thoughts. He turned to see her face pale, fear etched into every feature. What if she tells someone? What if they find us? He shook his head, trying to quell the rising panic. She wants revenge, she'll come for us herself first. We have to beat her to it. Suddenly, a branch snapped behind them. Mark's heart dropped. They weren't alone. Adrenaline surged, and he grabbed Tara's arm, pulling her into an empty garage nearby. Inside, the darkness felt suffocating, but the silence offered a momentary pause. Breathing heavily, he scanned the cluttered space. A pile of discarded items, a broken bike, and old toolboxes lined the walls. It was cramped, but they needed to think. Mark pressed his back to the wall, staring at Tara. "We need a plan. We can't just run. We have to confront her, face whatever she is going to throw at us." Tara looked hesitant, eyes wide. "And if she has backup? What if she is ready for us?" Mark felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He couldn't let fear dictate their actions, he had to protect her. "We'll have to outsmart her. Surprise her when she least expects it." But still, a seed of doubt sprouted in his mind. Could they really turn the table on someone so intent on revenge? Just then, a beam of light sliced through the garage's cracks, their breathing slowed as footsteps grew closer. Mark's stomach churned. They were coming. He raised a finger to his lips, urging Tara to stay quiet. The light moved past the entrance, illuminating the floorboards like a spotlight. Knowing they couldn't stay hidden for long, Mark grabbed a rusted wrench from the floor beside him, his heart pounding. The footsteps receded, but still, dread seeped into his veins. What if it was Cindy? What if this was the moment everything would unravel? As the minutes stretched into unbearable silence, Mark's resolve hardened. He had to find Cindy before she could find them, before the storm could consume them whole. They needed to confront her, or risk losing everything, but in the shadows, lurking behind the door, lay another threat waiting to be unleashed. "Do you trust me, Tara?" he whispered, the tension thick between them. I don't know," she stammered, hands shaking. With the stakes too high and the clock ticking, Mark felt a darkness closing in. He needed answers, and chasing peace was growing more dangerous by the second. How far would he go to protect Tara? Would facing Cindy uncover a truth too devastating to handle? And in that moment of uncertainty, Mark knew there was no turning back. Mark's grip on the wrench tightened. Fear coursed through him, his heart battering against his ribs like a caged animal. He and Tara didn't just need a plan, they needed a miracle. The fear pooling in his stomach threatened to bubble into panicked desperation. "Mark," Tara whispered urgently, her voice barely above a breath. "What if it's someone else? Someone who wants to help?" "Why, you don't understand," he replied, his voice barely a murmur, suffocated by dread. "Cindy has a way of turning every situation into a trap. We can't trust anyone, especially right now." He thought of Cindy, the way her laughter had once been a sweet melody, a stark contrast to the venomous threats she spat now. She had cracked under the pressure of jealousy, Mark knew that all too well. As long as they were together, they were in danger. He couldn't shake the image of her determined eyes, filled with rage and betrayal. The clattering of metal echoed from outside, jerking him from his thoughts. "What if they're coming to get us?" Tara's voice trembled, panic creeping in. "No," he breathed, trying to keep his own fear at bay. "Stay focused. We have to think." Just then, a loud crash resonated through the stillness, reverberating against the walls of the garage. An old door splintered off its hinges nearby, sending a wave of noise that echoed down the alley. Mark's breath hitched. It was closer than he expected. He exchanged glances with Tara. There was no room for fear. They had to act, and fast. Mark took a step toward the small window at the back of the garage, giving it a quick look. Shattered glass crunched underfoot. It was a risk, but they needed to know what awaited them on the other side. Through the murky glass, he caught sight of movement, dark figures advancing, their shadows stretching long in the dim light. Panic surged as he recognized one of the figures. It was a police officer, possibly responding to the earlier chaos. But the others? They were not uniformed, just silhouettes cloaked in darkness. "Tara, we have to go now," Mark urged, his voice strained with urgency. But before they could move, the door swung open, and two figures stepped in. Mark barely had time to process their identities. One was Cindy, her expression twisted with fury, and beside her stood a tall man, broad and imposing, whom Mark didn't recognize. "Mark. Tara. You think you could run from us forever?" Cindy's voice dripped with venom, eyes blazing like twin coals. "You should have known better than to cross me." Tara's grip on his arm tightened as everything inside him screamed to fight back or flee. Mark acted instinctively. He raised the wrench, ready to defend them against the mounting danger. "Get away from us, Cindy." Such bravado. She laughed, a chilling sound that filled the small space with dread. "You have no idea what you're in for." The man at her side stepped closer, and Mark's body tensed. He could sense the threat radiating from him. But the window of opportunity was narrowing. "Stand down or I'll make sure you regret it," Mark shouted, every muscle tensed, wishing he could hold his ground against their malevolence. "Regret? Oh, sweet Mark, you're already in too deep." Cindy's demeanor shifted. She seemed almost victorious, as if she held the cards in this deadly game. With a flick of her wrist, the imposing man lunged for Mark, who swung the wrench desperately. The impact rattled through his arms, and the man grunted, momentarily stunned. But Mark knew better. He couldn't leave it up to brute strength alone. "Run!" he yelled to Tara as they pushed through the narrow gap that separated the threats from their escape. Together, they barreled past the towering figure, adrenaline fueling each desperate step. But just as they dashed into the open night, a blinding light pierced the alleyway, quickly followed by shouts that echoed like thunder. Mark felt the ground shift beneath him, uncertainty swirling like a storm inside his gut. Were they free, or had they just stepped into a larger trap? They needed a safe place, somewhere to regroup. But with Cindy on their trail, every second felt like a countdown. "Mark, where do we go now?" Tara panted, glancing over her shoulder, fear etched across her features, and as the shadows drew closer, closing in like a predator stalking its prey, Mark could only pray they wouldn't run out of options too soon. What awaited them in the dark? Or were they walking deeper into a nightmare of Cindy's design, one from which escape might be impossible? The air outside felt electric with tension as Mark and Tara sprinted down the narrow alley, the blaring sirens sending adrenaline coursing through their veins. Each heartbeat screamed urgency, propelling them forward despite the ever-looming threat. Mark glanced over his shoulder, the shadows behind them morphing into menacing shapes. The blinding light from the police car swung wildly, illuminating the scene like a strobe light in a nightmare. Shadows danced, but what lurked in the dark was all too real. "Turn left!" Tara shouted suddenly, her voice cutting through the panic. Mark nodded, trusting her instincts, and they broke off into the side street. His lungs burned, the night air sharp and cold, but there was no time to slow down. The night offered no peace, only the echo of their hurried footsteps. As they turned the corner, they found themselves on a deserted street lined with dilapidated buildings. The flickering streetlights cast eerie shadows, magnifying their fear. "We need to find cover," Mark replied, scanning their surroundings. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by their labored breaths and the fading sirens behind them. They spotted an open door at the end of the block, a rundown convenience store. "In there!" Tara urged, darting forward. Mark followed closely, his mind racing with a mix of fright and determination. Inside, the store was dimly lit and seemingly abandoned. The shelves were dusty, and old newspapers littered the floor. They ducked behind a rack of canned goods, the metallic clang echoing in their ears. "Did we lose them?" Tara whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Mark panted, his heart still racing. "We just need to." Suddenly, the door swung open, a figure silhouetted against the outside light. It was too far to make out details, but Mark's heart dropped into his stomach. "Cindy," he muttered, recognizing the smooth, predatory silhouette. His grip tightened on the wrench. "Mark." Her voice called, laced with mock concern. "You can run, but you can't hide." There was an unsettling calm to her tone, a confident cruelty that sent chills down his spine. "Shoo!" Tara hissed, gripping his arm tightly. Her quiet panic mirrored his own. They had to be silent, invisible. "Police!" The officer shouted from outside. The sound was a lifeline, a desperate hope, but it also meant that time was running out. Mark pressed his back against the shelves, breathing shallowly. The swishing of footsteps approached. "Why are you playing games, Mark?" Cindy continued, stepping cautiously into the dim light. "You see, this is what happens when you make enemies." Mark could feel Tara trembling beside him. His mind raced. "We need to find a way out." Cindy muttered something to the figure behind her, and the imposing man stepped forward, his eyes scanning the store with methodical precision. Mark caught sight of a baseball bat resting against the cashier's counter. He needed to act. He couldn't let fear paralyze him. "On my count, we bolt for that bat," he whispered to Tara, who nodded, her face pale but determined. 1, 2, 3. They dashed out from their hiding spot, making a beeline for the counter, the echo of Cindy's laughter fading behind them, but in that split second, chaos erupted. The man lunged forward, his hand outstretched, and Tara screamed as Mark reached the bat, gripping it tightly. He turned just in time to see a flash of steel. "Mark! Watch out!" Tara's scream sliced through the air, time slowed, terror froze him in place, and as realization dawned, Mark felt a surge of adrenaline as he prepared to defend them against the nightmare unfolding. In that moment, he knew one thing: there was no escape without a fight. "Stay back!" he yelled, lifting the bat, determined to confront whatever lay ahead even if it meant ushering in their darkest hour. Just then, the lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. What awaited them in that pitch-black room? Death, or a final chance for survival? The darkness swallowed them, thick and suffocating, every second stretching into eternity. Mark could barely see his own hands in front of his face, but he felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins like fire. The bat felt reassuring and heavy in his grip, a lifeline in a sea of black that he strained to hear anything in the oppressive silence. The rush of his heartbeat seemed deafening, drowning out the world around him. Tara's breaths were quick and shallow, but she was still beside him, her presence grounding him even as dread wrapped around him like a vice. "For the love of God, Tara, stay close," he whispered, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Which way would the threat come? He could hear shuffling in the darkness, faint but growing louder. Mark's mind raced as he glanced toward the noise, every instinct screaming at him to prepare for an attack. Then he heard Cindy's voice again, cutting through the darkness like a knife. "You think this will help you? You're just delaying the inevitable." There was a smug confidence in her tone that turned his stomach. "Mark, what do we do?" Tara's whisper was laced with panic. Mark's eyes adjusted, barely making out vague shapes: a shelf, a splintered aisle, the faint outline of the door they had rushed through. "We need to get out, no more hiding. We rush for that door." But before he could make a move, the lights flickered back on. The store blinked alive, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting harsh shadows across the room. Mark squinted against the sudden brightness, and the sight before him made his stomach turn. Cindy stood at the entrance, her cruel smile glowing with triumph. Behind her, the imposing figure loomed large, eyes glinting like a predator waiting to strike. The baseball bat seemed smaller in Mark's hands, but he steeled himself, gripping it tighter. "Did you really think you could escape me?" she taunted, stepping closer, confidence radiating off her like heat. Tara gasped, clutching Mark's arm. "What do we do?" Mark felt a knot of anger and fear tighten in his gut. He couldn't back down now, running was no longer an option. "Cindy, this isn't what you want. Just let us go," he pleaded, his voice steady, even if his insides twisted like a coiled spring. "Oh, but it is exactly what I want." Her voice dripped with disdain. "You've both played your part perfectly." Mark squinted, trying to catch a glimpse of any weapon in the man's hand. His eyes narrowed, searching for an opening. "Tara, if I say go, run," he whispered, adrenaline coursing through him. She nodded, terror etched across her face. Then without warning, the stacked cans atop the shelf near Cindy toppled to the ground, the clang echoing ominously throughout the store. Mark sensed the unease rippling through the room, the uncertainty. Maybe it was a small victory, maybe it was the distraction they needed. "Now!" he shouted, launching himself at Cindy, swinging the bat with all his might, aimed at the darkness swirling around them. "Mark!" Tara screamed, but he pushed forward, determined to fight. More cans fell, chaos erupted as all hell broke loose. Cindy shrieked, jerking back, and Mark took that split second to drive his shoulder into her, knocking her to the side, set on reaching an exit. But the man was right behind them, his grip like iron as he lunged, sending Mark crashing to the floor. The bat skittered away, lost in the frenzy. "Run, Tara!" Mark shouted, desperation pouring through every word as he struggled against the weight of the man above him. But Tara didn't move. She froze, staring wide-eyed at the unfolding chaos, rooted in disbelief. Just as Mark fought to regain control, a deafening crash reverberated behind him, a shattering of glass followed by an explosive fire that erupted with a roar. He could feel the heat licking at his back, but his heart raced with pure confusion and fear. Who had done this? Friends, foes, who could be trusted? Would they escape unscathed? And with that unearthly sound, a new fear gripped him. The darkness was not done yet. There was something more lurking. Something even more menacing waiting in the shadows, what had truly been unleashed. Would they find salvation, or worse, succumb to the horrors night had yet to reveal? The flames danced fiercely in the corner of the store, casting flickering shadows that twisted and slithered like wraiths along the walls. Mark's heart hammered in his chest as the reality of their situation slammed into him. The chaos erupted with every glass shard that fell, a grim symphony of destruction. Cindy's shriek cut through the noise as she tumbled backward, her form illuminated in the fiery glow. Go! Now! Mark yelled again, the urgency thick in his voice. He caught a glimpse of Tara's vacillation, fear gripping her like a vice. It felt as though time froze, and every second expanded, stretching taut under the unbearable weight of impending doom. Then, something shifted in the shadows. A low, guttural growl slid through the air. It made the hairs on the back of his neck rise, icy fingers creeping over his skin. Mark instinctively reached out with a hand toward Tara, desperation pooling in his chest. She remained frozen, her eyes wide and horrified, caught in a trance of confusion. "Tara, please!" he cried as he pushed against the man still atop him, trying to wriggle free. The burning heat from the fire pressed against Mark's back, but his focus remained on Tara. "We have to move." Suddenly, the ground shook beneath them. Was it the aftermath of the explosion? Or something more sinister? Mark's instincts kicked in, his body propelling him forward. With a fierce twist, he dislodged the man from his back and scrambled to his feet, but the sight that met him was surreal. Cindy was down, struggling to rise as the inferno grew closer, while behind her, the weighty figure every bit the menacing shadow loomed larger, undeterred by the chaos. "Run!" Mark shouted again, this time keeping his eyes fixed on Tara until he saw her jolt into action. She was no longer rooted in place, instead, her legs pumped, shaking her into motion. But still, she hesitated, glancing back at the flaming wreckage with dread painted across her features. Cindy's laughter pierced through the noise. "You'll never leave, Mark. This is just the beginning." A spark leapt from the flames, catching a nearby shelf, sending the contents cascading to the floor in a crushing avalanche. Mark gritted his teeth, pushing aside the horror lingering in his gut. "Just get to the door." His voice was almost a roar. With a sudden determination, Tara darted past him toward the exit. Mark followed, adrenaline flooding his system with every step. They rushed together, the air thickening with smoke. He could hear Cindy muttering in anger, and then a sharp command that made Mark's stomach twist, "Get them." In a heartbeat, the man lunged again, his massive shadow falling over them, blocking the way. Mark, feeling the weight of inevitability pressing in, skidded to a halt, eyes darting frantically. He had no weapon, nothing but resolve. "Mark!" Tara was struggling against the figure, but he knew they had one chance to break free. The bat was still somewhere on the floor, but there was no time. Dramatic exits make for great stories, huh? He shouted sarcastically, attempting to obscure the terror bubbling up inside. "Not today." Then he charged, launching himself into the man with all the force he could muster. It was sheer recklessness, but it worked for him in that split second. The man stumbled backward, momentarily leashed by surprise. Mark propelled himself into the fray, adrenaline coursing through him. Tara was almost at the door, but Mark shouted to her, "Don't stop." And just as they neared the exit, the deafening growl erupted again, but this time it was accompanied by a growl from the shadows. Something was rushing toward them, something that shouldn't exist in the light of their desperate attempt to survive. "Mark!" Tara screamed, terror echoing in her voice. And then the darkness surged, as if alive, closing in around them. Was the nightmare far from over? Or was this only the beginning of something far worse? The chaos enveloped them, flames licking dangerously close and shadows dancing like hungry beasts. Mark could feel the heat seizing the air, panic tightening around his chest like a vice. Adrenaline fueled his every move, propelling him toward Tara as she desperately clawed her way toward the exit. "Go! I'll hold him!" Mark yelled, his voice raw and strained as he turned back to face the looming figure of the man behind them. Tara hesitated, horror etched across her face, but the flames drew nearer, forcing her instincts into overdrive. Mark, but he cut her off, the urgency burning in his veins. "Just run." The words ignited something fierce within her, and she burst toward the door, her lifeline just as the man lunged. Mark felt time slow as he pivoted away from the chaos of terror, grabbing the nearest shard of a shattered glass display, its jagged edges gleaming ominously under the flickering lights. "No!" the man bellowed, anger twisting his features as Mark swung, narrowly missing him but catching the edge of a shelf, sending it crashing down. The force jolted Mark, knocking him off balance, but he steadied himself, eyes locked onto Tara's retreating figure. The heat of the blaze surged as the man recovered, snarling, "You think I won this?" Mark's heart raced faster, the primal fear of losing everything wrestling with his will to survive. "You'll have to catch me first," he taunted, sprinting after Tara, who was now free of the clutches of the chaos. As she darted through the doorway, the man's growl echoed ominously behind them, sending Mark's pulse into overdrive. He hurled himself through the opening, lungs burning, and as they stumbled into the starlit night, a cacophony erupted behind them. A blast shook the ground, sending fire and debris soaring into the air, the flames exploding out the store's entrance in a blinding wave of fiery destruction. "Mark!" Tara screamed, her panic carving lines of fear into the night. Their eyes locked, and for a fleeting moment, the world fell silent, the horrors forgotten as they clung to one another. But just when relief threatened to wash over them, the shadows shifted, a figure emerging from the smoke. The man simply wouldn't relent. "Cindy is waiting," he howled, embracing the dark madness surrounding him, an echo that resonated within Mark's core. They hadn't escaped yet. "Run!" Mark shouted again, the words a primal shout. They took off into the alley, breathlessly navigating the path ahead, driven by fear and desperation. Despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins, doubt crept in. Where could they go? How could they escape? Tara gasped, glancing back over her shoulder. Why is she doing this? Mark shook his head, she's twisted. She won't stop until we're trapped or worse. They reached a corner, ducking behind a dumpster, hearts racing, breathless from the weight of their fear. The night pulsed around them, an oppressive silence that drew tighter. Mark leaned back, his eyes darting to every shadow, every flicker of movement. "We need a plan," he murmured, and just as the words left his mouth, they heard the soft crunch of footsteps drawing closer. "Oh God!" Tara whimpered, her face pale. Mark gripped her shoulders. "Stay here. I'll look," he whispered, still pushing against the panic clawing at his insides. He took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of bravado he had left. He edged around the corner, time stretching endlessly as he searched the dimly lit street. Just then, from the darkness, another figure emerged, this time less menacing but equally shocking. "Mark?" It was his brother, Jason, with fear written across his face. "Jason. You need to help us." Mark exclaimed, relief washing over him like a cool wave, but fear lingered, twisting his stomach. "Tara?" Jason's eyes widened, darting past Mark and instinctively searching the shadows. She's safe. But we can't stay here. Cindy's not far behind, and she'll be coming for both of us." Mark urged, adrenaline driving him forward. Jason's expression darkened. "I heard about the fire. Everyone's searching for you. We need to go now." Without another moment to waste, they hurried towards Jason's car, the engine roaring to life as Mark and Tara jumped in. "Get us out of here!" Mark yelled to his brother, his heart hammering in his chest. They flew down the deserted street, but uncertainty clouded every thought. "Where to?" Jason barked, eyes fixed on the road. "Anywhere but here. Cindy and that guy will be looking for us," Tara added, her voice shaky but urgent. As they drove away, secrets flowed like a river of despair into Mark's mind. The faces of those he loved danced in the shadows just outside the glow of the streetlights, and he knew this wouldn't end just because they had escaped tonight. "We need to expose her," Tara said, her voice growing steadier. "We need to tell the police everything." Mark nodded, the lump in his throat easing slightly. "Yeah, but they'll need proof." As the car sped through the darkened road, he glanced at Tara, then Jason. They were in this together, bound by a shared desperation, facing the darkness that would never fully release its grip unless they confronted it. The flames behind them might have faded, but the fire inside him burned brighter. Tonight wasn't the end. As they drove, determination ignited a spark deep within Mark. They would fight back. They wouldn't let Cindy's shadows consume them. They had to emerge from the nightmare, reclaim the lives they were meant to live, and stand tall against whatever horrors lay ahead. And as the first light of dawn began to break, painting the world in hues of orange and gold, hope flickered just enough to guide them forward. But don't wait even one more second. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. We need to hear your reactions. Flood the comments section with your theories about this wild finale. And don't keep this to yourself. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.